So one of the questions a lot of fans have anytime a new wrestler, like some of the talent we saw debut last night on NXT's soft reboot, relaunch, if you will, known as NXT 2.0, anytime any of those kind of stars debut, one of the first questions a lot of people have is why did they change their name? Or why did a company like WWE have them change their name to be this instead of being as they are, or as many fans would probably know them as, outside of WWE. And it's real simple. It's real simple. It's called marketing. And you see, WWE wouldn't have to do this, if you will, if it wasn't for what happened 25 years ago with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. You see, when both of them showed up in WCW, pretty much they gave off the vibes, just the way they spoke and acted, they gave off the vibes of being Razor Ramon and Diesel, the very characters they recently portrayed in WWF. So what did WWF have to do? They had to file a cease and desist against WCW, and that's why you started seeing Kevin Nash and Scott Hall act more like themselves, if you will, than what they did originally when they came on board. Now, now as far as how that relates to WWE taking someone like, let's say, Rick Steiner's son, and instead of letting him be Bronson Rechsteiner, which is his real name, or Rex Steiner as he's known outside of WWE, they made him Braun Breaker. Now, I said Brock in my initial video earlier this morning, but it's actually Braun Breaker, which is short, Braun being short for Bronson, and then of course Breaker being just a made-up name, a made-up last name they gave him. And the reason they did that is because of, like I said, legal reasons. They did that because of ownership, marketing. I mean, if Vince McMahon sees potential in Rex Steiner under this name, then you cannot tell me that he's not going to do everything he can, to push this guy to the very top. I mean, he's already being teased for a main event title program, with Tommaso Ciampa after he won the title. And on top of that, he beat one of the guys that competed in the match later that night, at the beginning of the night, in LA Knight, the former Eli Drake. But again, the obvious question is, why didn't they just let him be Rex Steiner? And like I said, it's about marketing. But it's also because of another reason. You see, Rex Steiner, like I said, being the son of Rick Steiner, is also this nephew of Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump. And we all know the tumultuous history between WWE and Scott Steiner. So the last thing they want to be known to the world is that one of the new recruits, potential new big stars that will be elevated out of NXT if things go right for them, is related to Big Papa Pump, the big bad booty daddy, because he's his nephew. I mean, they don't have a problem, obviously, with him being related to Rick Steiner if that was the only case, but because he's the nephew of Scott Steiner, they want to avoid any acknowledgement of that, even though they should realize that nowadays we are in a world to where the wrestling fan, casual, hardcore, or on and off, pretty much is clued in as to who is who and what the connection is to wrestling. So for anybody that saw Braun Breaker debut last night, they know who he is. Just by the look in his face, his build, they know who he is. And hopefully down the line, WWE will realize, hey, we can't hide this, we might as well have him admit who he is. That's it. The same with Cal Bloom. The same with Cal Bloom. Everybody knows that he is Wayne Bloom's son. Everybody knows that. He is basically the son of Wayne Bloom, one of the former Beverly brothers. I think it was Bo Beverly, I think. And also known for teaming with the other Beverly, which was Blake, Mike Enos. Everybody knows, who Wayne Bloom and Mike Enos are. They know the stint from WWE. They know the time in AWA. They know the time in WCW. They know who they are. And Cal Bloom is one of those guys that may not be on the radar of being very notable, but by the name, all people have to do is look up, and they're either going to see, a connection to Matt Bloom, the former Albert, or they're going to see the connection to Wayne Bloom, and more so Wayne Bloom than Matt, and then they'll be able to be like, oh, that's his son, and you could see it. You could see it in the face, except for the unibrow and everything being like the only thing that might differentiate him from his dad. You could see it in the face, and as well as with the hair a little bit. But again, why give him the name Von Wagner? Like I said, it's all about marketing. It's all about what is marketable to the audience, whether the hardcore, casual, on and off. What is marketable? What is appealing? And by giving him the name Von Wagner, that's something that nobody really hears that much around. If I can kind of say, without saying if you will. Well, I just said it again. I know I say that a lot in my videos. So again, I might as well put out a t-shirt. But like I said, it's a name that doesn't really get utilized a lot, if at all, in wrestling. So why not have him? Why not give him a name that stands out? That gets people's attention. That will get people to tune in and wonder, who is this Von Wagner? And they see who he is. I mean, the fact that you have Vince McMahon pretty much being one of the men, if not the guy, one of the guys, if not the guy, behind Von Wagner, Cal Bloom, because he looks at him as being the next Edge. Yeah, that's a big endorsement. But the thing is, it's up to Cal Bloom to live up to that endorsement by Vince by proving he can be that next Edge. But again, the reason they didn't let him be Cal Bloom, or maybe even Cal Enos, if you will, is due to the fact that they want to market him. They want a name they can market and own and copyright. That's what they want. I mean, here's the thing. Going back to the Scott Hall, Kevin Nash deal 25 years ago, what did WWE do in response to prove they owned the names of Razor Ramon and Diesel? They took basically a guy known in Japan and elsewhere as Big Titan, and they took a guy that became known as Kane, the brother of The Undertaker, Glenn Jacobs, and they put them into these basically cosplay, outfits. Well, basically they were the same identical outfits as before, but they basically put them into cosplay-like outfits to go out and cosplay as Diesel and Razor Ramon. I mean, they even had JR on commentary, Jim Ross that is, on commentary, say that they have all the right to be Razor Ramon and Diesel as anybody else. That right being in WWE is, that's the one thing he didn't say, that they have as much right to, basically what he said in a broadcast, I think it was on pay-per-view, that they have as much right to be Razor Ramon and Diesel as anybody else, as Kevin Nash. I don't know if he said Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Well, he did say it by name, because I think finally he started to realize, these guys are, they have the right to utilize the names, but they're not a Kevin Nash, they're not a Scott Hall. I think he did that one time on a pay-per-view. But the thing is, he came out when he was working with WWE at that time and saying, hey, they have as much right to utilize those names as anybody else. What he didn't say, and this is what I was trying to mention moments ago, is he should have underlined that by saying they have as much right to be Razor Ramon and Razor Ramon and Diesel as anybody else, as far as WWE is concerned. So that should have been the underline, like they have as much right to be Razor Ramon and Diesel as anybody else in the company. But that's why, again, when you look at someone like Rex Steiner being given the name Braun Breaker and Cal Bloom given the name Von Wagner, and possibly other examples down the line to come, it's because of ownership. That's what it is. It's about ownership. It's about being able to copyright and own the name, so that even when the talent goes away, but you still want to utilize the character, you still see potential in the character, you can bring the character back, but you could bring him back as somebody that's not the same person, but then maybe you could make up a story by saying this is why they're now going by that name. I mean, a good example possibly is The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. For all we know, everybody is pretty much speculating whether or not Wyndham Rotunda will be back, but only as The Fiend. But here's the thing, WWE could have copyrighted ownership of the Fiend character, and they don't even have to bring Bray Wyatt in. They could just have somebody else don the mask and be the Fiend, and nobody would be able to tell the difference. He'd have to have the same build and be trained in the same moveset, excuse me there, but nobody would be able to tell he's the Fiend. And also that would prevent someone like AEW from trying to do a Fiend-like character with him if he goes there, let's say to lead the Dark Order or whatever. You know, they would have all the legal right to sue AEW if they tried that. So that's basically why all these men and sometimes these women have their names changed. That's why Taya Valkyrie agreed to be Frankie Monet. You know, let's say Taya decides to leave WWE one day after her contract's up, you know, and go back to being Taya Valkyrie on the indies, but they still want to use the Frankie Monet character. They can give it to somebody else and make up a story about how they are now able to utilize the Monet name, if you know what I mean. So, in closing, basically the situation is this. Yes, should they let them use their real names because it's obvious who they are and what the connection is to wrestling, and basically, you know, what they did outside of WWE before coming there. You know, should they let them use it? Absolutely, I do agree on that. It makes more sense, and it gets more eyes on your product. But if you go out and decide, yeah, we're going to bring this person in, but we're going to change their name, you're only doing that for marketing reasons. That's the only reason. That's the only reason WWE does it, or any company does it, for that matter. And that is the fact that if you go to, you know, any company that decides, you know what, we want to own that name, we want to own that gimmick, we want to own that character, they have all the right to say, hey, we want you to change your name to this, because if you leave, we can still utilize that, you know, for marketing, for merchandise, whatever. And that's it. You know, that is it. You know, so in the end, like I said, I do agree. They should let them utilize their real names because it's obvious to a lot of people of who they really were, or who they really were outside of WWE before coming there, and who the connection is in wrestling as far as, like, let's say a generational deal is concerned as well. But the reason they don't, like I was trying to say, is because of marketing reasons. The fact that, let's say, you know, Rex Steiner leaves, they can still use the Braun Breaker character and name and all that and gimmick. It's the same with Cal Bloom. If he decides to leave, they can still use the Von Wagner name and character and gimmick. You know, end of discussion, end of story. Same with, like I say, Taya Valkyrie. Everybody knows she's Taya Valkyrie, but she's going by Frankie Monet. And why? Because basically it's marketing. It's about ownership for WWE, and it stems all the way back to what happened 25 years ago with Hall and Nash. So that's basically the way I look at it. That's how I look at it. I'm sure I'm not the only one alone in looking at it like that, but it's fact. It's fact. It is absolute fact that the reason WWE does this, or any company in wrestling or non-wrestling does it, is because they want to utilize that character at any time. You know, they feel like it. I mean, Marvel, for example, you know, they brought in Don Cheadle, if you will, to be the new War Machine by replacing the other guy. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do that. They could have said, we're not going to use War Machine anymore because that was this guy. But because Marvel, Disney owns the War Machine character, they can cast anybody in that role. The same here. The same here. So that's basically, for anybody that's curious, from my point of view, unscripted, if you will, why basically WWE changes the names of a lot of the talent they have coming into the company. Whether it's talent that's starting out in wrestling on a national scale with them exactly, or if it's they're coming from an independent background where they work for other companies like Impact, Lucha Underground, you name it. You know, the reason they change their name is for ownership, marketing, and in case maybe down the line they decide, hey, this guy or gal's no longer with us, but we still own this character, let's give it to somebody else. And that's all they'd have to do. But let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below, live chat during the premiere, like the video, check out my Teespring store, and I am out.